Good evening, Malaysia and followers from around the world. One trending issue in the media today is the alleged theft of a portion of $6 million, USD 6 million, or RM 25 million, which was seized by the MACC. It has raised many questions because it was alleged that some of the stolen money was replaced with fake currency. Secondly, why was the MACC investigating a case involving its own officers over stolen money, which by right should be the jurisdiction of the police? And today, we have heard that Bukit Aman has finally decided to investigate the 6 senior MACC officers over this missing money. The news today from Bernama says that Bukit Aman will summon 3 senior officers from the MACC who were previously remanded for 6 days to complete investigations into the loss of these case items involving 25 million ringgit or USD 6 million, as I said. Bukit Aman CID Director Abdul Jalil Hassan said his department would also call the owner of the money, namely former Director General of the Malaysian External Intelligence Organization, Hazana Abdul Hamid. All of them will be called to complete the investigation. And finally, we have this case where the police, after much hoo-ha and over the MACC and the role of the police, they have finally announced that they will investigate the case and take over from the MACC, which it should have been right from the beginning. Joining us tonight is lawyer Dato' David Gurupatham and media owner, the publisher of Malaysia's biggest Bahasa Malaysia daily, Sinar Harian, and of course, Rasuah buster, Dato' Hussamuddin Yaacub. Welcome on board, guys. Okay, we will start the conversation. Of course, we will pose this question to our lawyer friend, David, who is well-known and well-versed with the legal cases. Right from the beginning, why do you think that it was wrong for the MACC to investigate its own kind and not the police?
Well, mainly because if you look at the allegation is one of theft of money which was held in evidence, right? The allegation, of course, of replacing with counterfeit cash, the allegation of tampering with evidence, right? These are offences offhand, about 4 or 5 offences. And these offences actually come under the Penal Code, not the MACC Act, Act 694, which is Malaysian Anti-Corruption Act 2009. Now, the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Act, Commission Act 2009, makes it very clear in Part 4 the number of or the kind of offences that they have jurisdiction over, right? And in this case, mostly they are involving graft or abuse of power, right? In other words, corruption or abuse of power, but none of the main sort of, if you want to call it, offences that I spoke about just now, which is theft, handling of fake currency, counterfeit currency, and perhaps even interfering with evidence. So this comes on. So if they don't have the power in the first place, what were they investigating, and what were their powers to investigate, and whether such an investigation in itself, one is an abuse of power, and two is, could that be struck out? Then what happens?
David, if I may follow up with a question. So in simple language, when it comes to corruption, money laundering, abuse of power, that is the jurisdiction of the MACC. When
Correct.
it comes to things like theft, would be the case of the police. Now,
under the Penal Code, the offences are in the Penal Code, yes.
Okay, now the MACC officers been well versed with the law and that they know where their power lies. What do you think was the reason why they decided to pursue their own cause by instead of referring to the police? What do you think was on their mind?
Well, I can't say what's on their mind, but certainly, there's a very hallowed principle in law that justice must not only be done, but it must be seen to be done, and also that one cannot be a judge and jury in your own case. It leads to the credibility of the investigation and the credibility of the institution as a whole, which is the MACC, the anti-corruption body as a whole. So in the first place, even if they had the powers, that whole question mark would be there, that whether or not that investigation process in itself. So they shouldn't even have conducted it in the first place. That's my opinion.
Datuk nak tanya soalan lah, sebab Datuk ini digelar diri sebagai rasuah buster. Apakah emosi yang tercetus bila mendengar dan membaca berita ini? Sebab Datuk mengeluarkan satu statement yang bernas mengenai isu ini. Why make you decided to issue this strong statement?
Okay, I think for the past 6 bulan kami sedang bekerja keras untuk membawa sebuah kempen kesedaran supaya orang-orang rakyat Malaysia bangkit untuk menolak budaya rasuah. Menolak budaya rasuah. That means budaya adalah memberi dan menerima rasuah. Kerana kita lihat di Malaysia ini rasuah begitu rampant, begitu berleluasa, dah jadi macam darah daging, akak berakar umbi lah. So we have been trying very hard to try to get buy-in from various NGOs, dan kita tengok, terutama orang Melayu. Saya orang Melayu, and saya media company yang saya kendalikan ini, kita readers kita banyak from the Malay heartland, kan? Maknanya kampung-kampung. Jadi kita sedang cuba menghantar satu mesej yang jelas supaya kita harus menolak rasuah ini. Tiba-tiba bila kes ini berlaku, orang mula jadi bertanya-tanya, SPRM sendiri pun dituduh membuat kerja-kerja ni. Jadi sudah menjadi orang yang jadi suspek lah. Jadi ini yang kami di Rasuah Buster merasakan, kami kena hantar satu mesej yang jelas kepada semua orang. Kerana kalau kita tengok, kalau di swasta kita ada, I think Datuk David boleh confirm, kita ada 17A. Kan, the akta yang 70A, di mana kalau sesiapa dalam organisation itu melakukan rasuah, bos diri kena bertanggungjawab. Kan, bos yang kena terhukum, dan kita dah ada satu presiden bulan lepas ke 2 bulan lepas, pengarah tu dihukum. Jadi maknanya sekarang di Malaysia ini kita melihat orang di Malaysia ni, orang yang melakukan rasuah, dituduh mahkamah ras, mereka tak rasa bersalah. Kerana mereka tak rasa bersalah dan mereka tak rasa bertanggungjawab. Itu sebab kami di Rasuah Buster, kami merasakan kita ambil insiden ini kerana kita baru beberapa hari itu lagi melancarkan melalui gabungan kami, kita lancarkan 6 tuntutan untuk membersihkan politik Malaysia daripada rasuah. We went on national television secara besar-besaran, kan, kita buat satu pelancaran untuk menuntut supaya kerajaan melaksanakan reformasi, 6 reformasi itu, dan sekarang sedang dibincangkan hangat. Dan kerajaan juga sudah tanda tangani MOU dengan parti pembangkang untuk menjalankan reformasi, dan sebahagian daripada itu terkandung dalam 6 yang kami tuntut. Tapi tiba-tiba timbul kes ini. Dan yang dituduh melakukan orang-orang SPRM sendiri. Jadi ini kita merasakan kita kena bawa satu budaya, ketua mesti bertanggungjawab. Itu sebab kami di Rasuah Buster mengeluarkan satu statement, dan kalau pasal kita tengok di luar negara, kalau ada berlaku jambatan runtuh, Menteri Kerja Raya dia akan berhenti tender resignation. Ataupun kalau kita tengok di Singapura, baru dituduh satu menteri, saya ingat zaman Lee Kuan Yew dulu, dia bunuh diri pun. Kita orang Islam tak boleh bunuh diri lah, bukan? Jadi maknanya ini yang kita nak sampaikan mesej supaya pemimpin-pemimpin, ketua jabatan, ketua SPRM, ketua polis, ketua apa saja, ketua menteri ke, kalau ada tuduhan, mereka kena bertanggungjawab. Ini yang mesej kita nak sampaikan, dan kita harap kali ini, pasal selama ini orang Malaysia mengambil rasuah itu biasa. Sekarang what we are trying to tell everyone is Ini bukan biasa. Rasuah bukan biasa. Salah guna kuasa bukan kuasa. Tambah-tambah seperti Datuk David cerita tadi pasal benda ni macam mana? Bukan bidang you yang siasat. Seolah-olah ada satu usaha nak cover up. Jadi ini yang saya rasa kita tak boleh tolerate lagi. Jadi rasuah basis akan bersuara lantanglah supaya kita nak hantar mesej kepada seluruh rakyat Malaysia dan juga kepada pemimpin penjawat awam that we are watching you.
Datuk, saya membaca statement Datuk, saya pun masih ingat lagi lah. You use the peribahasa harapkan pagar makan padi. Wow, I think it was really strong. David, okay, now there's another case which I like to ask because a lot of Malaysians are asking this question. Now, so the first case, of course, we're talking about involving the Malaysia's spy lah. Okay, they call her super spy now, Datuk Hazana Abdul Hamid. She was charged in 2018 with criminal breach of trust involving RM 50.4 of government funds. However, she was granted a discharge not amounting to an acquittal by the High Court in April. Then, subsequently, it was reported that former Felda board member Nur Ihsanuddin Muhammad Harun Narishid had returned the money before the investigation began over 29 alleged bribery charges and was acquitted because the money was returned before the investigation. So we have these two cases which for many laymen, they have raised these questions. People like me who are not well versed with the law, we just read what is in the media. Even for me, who has covered court before, but for me, I've not been in the courts for a long time. Even for me, it's like I need a learning process to understand better. Is it normal for the MACC to sort of like discharge or not pursue a case if a person returns the money? Because I know that in the US, they have such similar situation where if you return the money or portion of it, then you can have a what they call it, a negotiation. What's the legal term for it? Where you agree to a certain term and then you have kind of agreement to lower down the punishment. Do we have this kind of arrangement, and why do this kind of situation arises in Malaysia?
Okay, I think the basic thing we must remember is we are a country of laws. Okay, and you know, I'm always someone that, you know, regardless of the outcome, I'm someone that always says we have to follow the rule of law, you know, and follow the laws. So the principal position is that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Okay, so there must be someone that's proven to be guilty. So in the cases that you talked about with regard to someone perhaps who has not been proven guilty for whatever reason, the prosecution may not have the evidence or may decide that they don't have enough to prove guilt, then that person is still deemed innocent because he's not been proven guilty. Doesn't mean he's not guilty, right? Because we follow the law, to be fair. Okay. Now, with regards to things like, oh, I returned the money and so there should not be an offense, I think that is absolutely wrong. Okay. And why I say it's wrong is because in the act itself that I talked about, the Anti-Corruption Act, right? Itself, in the definition of prescribed offense, and there's a definition section of this, and in prescribed offense, it says an attempt to commit any of the offenses in itself is an offense. You get what I mean? Yeah. That means even an attempt to do so. So in that instance, it is illogical to me to say that, oh, if I've given back the money, then there's no offense. It would go against the definition of the law of what an offense is, right? And I'm just quoting the act. This is not my personal opinion. Yeah. It's there. Right?
So David, in the US, do they practice such similar area where they call it plea bargaining, right? Where is there such a thing? Huh?
There is something called, well, there's a limited plea bargaining, you know, not the same as the US, but to me, this is not even plea bargaining. You know, you need to have established an offense in the first place, but the message coming out is, oh, you return the money, so it's not an offense. It is an offense. Even in plea bargain or whatever, You know what I mean? That there has to be a charge, or there must be an offense that's committed. And in this instance, the Act itself says that an attempt to commit something like that is a crime. Abetment is a crime to commit an offense. Conspiracy to commit an offense, even if you didn't commit it, is already a crime. It's already an offense in that sense, right? So the justification that, oh, the person has returned the money and so the offense is not committed would, to me, go against the Act.
Okay, David. Now I want to move on to the case of the police. Initially, the police say that we have not investigated the case involving the MACC officers. Then he says that we have not received any police report. But today, according to the news report, it says that the police have received a report and now it is investigating. As a layman, I will ask this question: do the police need for a formal police report to be lodged before they investigate on such cases? Is this a practice? Is this a requirement?
Well, there must be a first information report. Otherwise, later on, procedurally, there might be issues, if you want to then, have a conviction and so on and so forth, right? But the idea of a police report is not an issue altogether. Quite often, the police themselves, when they are notified of an offense or they're aware of an offense and they want to investigate an offense, they will lodge the report. It doesn't have to be from the outside. They can themselves lodge the report. Now, to me, why I found that statement a little confusing was the fact that the MACC themselves had announced that they had so-called remanded these three people for the so-called offenses that they made a statement. All right, so there was the statement made by MACC themselves.
Yeah.
And I would have expected that the police would use that statement in itself. Anyone can lodge a police report. They can also lodge a police report and investigate that matter, because it's not surat layang, it's not an allegation, it's not something that came out in Facebook or whatever. This was a statement that came out of MACC, and the statement clearly said they were being investigated for alleged theft, right? Interfering with evidence, and counterfeit. So these are all the jurisdiction of the police.
Yeah. Now, of course, I agree also that the police stated correctly, when he said that they will be calling up the person who put on social media some of the alleged details, and alleged information, which he put it on his, I don't know whether it was Facebook or whatever platform, and they said that they will call him to provide information. I felt that it was fair, because if I'm investigating this case, I'm a police. If you have known so much information, then as a police, I would want to know what else do you know. Okay, but of course, by doing so, sometimes it sends the wrong message that the police is going after the whistleblower instead of pursuing the case. And that was what was the impression of many people in the public who may not understand the procedure and the requirements of the police. And that is where the communication part comes in. Because initially the MACC and the police says that advise the public not to comment or not to speculate. But this is the social media world. Everybody comments, everybody have a say. Would it help, do you think, that if the police or the MACC provides more details and more information? Because if you do not do so, then of course it leads on to a lot of issues. And in social media, people seem to believe and forward everything that they read, even though it's fake or wrong. But it is hard to control such information in this particular age. What do you think that the police or MACC should have done instead of asking people not to comment or to speculate?
Okay, I think we have to be very clear on what's allowed and what's not allowed. Okay, what's not allowed is any statement that is going to prejudice an investigation. So, for example, if you listen to some of the MPs who made statements asking questions, now that really is not really interfering with the investigation. Just like us, we're talking about questions and we're asking those. They're not really, you get what I mean? And the reason why is because sometimes you may alert or things may alert somebody who may want to conceal information, or they, that sort of thing. So if it is going to interfere with a police investigation, then I think that's fair. That's number one. Number two is if it has the outcome of what we call sub judice, which is going to interfere with the decision of, let's say, a court or whatever at a later stage.
That means that the sub judice part comes in when the court proceeding has begun, or when these officers are, if they were to be charged in court, then the sub judice part will come in, right?
That is the second stage lah. Okay, the first stage, as I said, is something that must be, there must be some possibility of interfering with a fair investigation. As I said, everybody is innocent until proven guilty, correct? So not everything interferes, correct? Like if you were to ask what is the power of the police or the power of the MACC and so on and so forth, that's not interfering with so that shouldn't be an issue, okay? And so the next step might be when they are charged, then something that could interfere with the decision or the outcome of the judge, or pressure the judge into an assumption of guilt, because, the public are talking about the fact that this person is guilty. So those are things that you could say if they came out and said, look, please don't comment. But to say don't comment at all, then there must be some basis lah. Because where is that interfering with an investigation, correct? And on to your second part of the question, how perhaps they should have dealt with it, perhaps is really, you see, the first thing was, well, I can't investigate MACC because, I'm just going through the chronology from the perspective of the layperson.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't investigate, no police report was made, right? But just after you say that, you say, but I'm going to investigate the guy who posted it on FB.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, the impression is that, hey, how come you don't want to investigate the wrongdoer or alleged wrongdoer? Sorry, let me rephrase that. The alleged wrongdoer, but you're investigating the so-called whistleblower, as you say.
Yeah.
So I think, and then later they came out and said, yes, we are investigating. So I think they should have perhaps done that in a more structured way to say, look, we are now investigating this case, and we would appreciate it if anything that leads or disturbs this investigation, perhaps we should not speculate on it. That's number one. Number two, again, as I said, see, in today's world, right, social media is a good thing and a bad thing. Yeah. Don't forget, primarily in these kind of things, I still believe in the hallmark of everyone is innocent until proven guilty. In a lot of instances, sometimes somebody lodges a police report for anything against you or whatever, and then the whole media goes, and then and then later you are really found to be innocent, or you're really not involved in it, but your reputation is gone because it's all out there on the net. You can't take it down. So, what I'm trying to say is balance on the other side. But to just say blanket, don't talk about it, I think perhaps is not the right approach.
Yeah.
Because we do have a limited freedom of expression also, right? In the Constitution.
As you say that it's all a perception. Nak tanya Datuk sikit tentang persepsi, kerana taraf Malaysia ni, taraf Malaysia mengenai to eradicate, membasmikan korupsi is not doing too well. In social media, Malaysia diisytiharkan sebagai boleh land, to macam bermaksud that semua boleh diberes lah, semua dia macam Indonesia lah, bisa diatur kan. And you have been fighting corruption, and you know that in terms of perception, we were not doing too well. Datuk, when you launch this campaign, apakah harapan Datuk?
Okay. If you notice, I think boleh dikatakan rakyat Malaysia, kita a bit laid back dan kita condone the corrupt culture. So as long as we are not involved, then kita rasa orang lain buat tak apa, kan? Oh, kita tak kisah, kita tak nak jaga tepi kain orang, kan? But anyhow, kita dah nampak kesan daripada rasuah sepanjang 40-50 tahun ini sedang menghancurkan negara kita, kan, merosakkan negara kita, dan rasuah tu makin dibuat secara terang-terang dan secara terbuka. Inilah sebagai contohnya. Jadi kita tengok salah guna kuasa ni terlalu berleluasa, dan kalau kita tak lakukan sesuatu atau kita kondon ataupun kita tak kisah, dia akan jadi lebih teruk, lagi lebih teruk. Jadi kalau generasi kita ni mungkin kita boleh survive lagi, kerana mungkin kan kita jati diri kita masih kuat dan kita masih ada because kita ni baby boomers ni, kita we are actually builder, bukan? Kita dah daripada kampung kita datang, kita boleh survive. Tapi anak-anak kita sekarang kerja dah susah. Dulu kita graduate, kita terus dapat kerja. Senang dapat kerja. Peluang banyak. Sekarang peluang dah tak ada, dan peluang pula kita terpaksa rebut dengan orang-orang yang ada connection, yang ada kota, ada itu. Jadi ini yang saya rasakan ini tidak sihat in the long run. Jadi itu yang saya rasakan kita perlu putuskan rantaian ini. We must break the chain. Kita break the chain supaya culture ini kita boleh cabut daripada sistem kita mulakan culture yang baru. Tapi untuk buat ini, kita perlu satu perubahan kepada cara fikir. Mana orang Melayu mesti berubah, orang Cina mesti berubah, semua kaum mesti berubah. Because seperti saya ulang berkali-kali, rasuah ini bukan masalah orang Melayu saja.
Yes.
Masalah orang Malaysia. Rasuah di korporat banyak, di swasta, di bisnes, di profesional, di legal pun ada juga rasuah. Jadi maknanya berleluasa. Jadi kalau kita tak stop, dia akan jadi semakin parah. Dan kita tengok the effects-nya bila kita tengok rasuah di peringkat kerusi parlimen, jawatan menteri, rasuah JLC punya chairmanship apa. Jadi ini saya rasakan memerlukan satu pemikiran baru, satu gerak kerja baru. Jadi maknanya orang Melayu, orang Cina, orang semua Malaysia kena bangun bangkit untuk menolak semua pemimpin ataupun parti-parti politik ataupun ketua korporat, ke pegawai-pegawai kerajaan, ke ketua apa saja. Maknanya kita kena secara terbuka must tell them, hey, we know that you are corrupted, we don't like this, you better stop or we change you. And I think kita berharap masa PRU 15 nanti rakyat akan betul-betul menolak semua pemimpin yang rasuah. Tak kira parti mana. Pasal kita dah tengok masa BN dulu ada rasuah. Ada masa PH dulu kita tengok ada juga salah guna kuasa. Apa yang dia orang komplain tentang apa yang zaman Muhyiddin buat, masa PH pun ada. Dan sekarang pun masa zaman PM ke-9 pun ada juga macam-macam. Kita boleh nampak. Rakyat dah dengan adanya sosial media kita boleh nampak semua yang sedang berlaku. Jadi maknanya sekarang rakyat harus kena ada keberanian. Kalau betul nak tolak rasuah, kita kena lebih tegas, lebih lantang bersuara. Jadi tak kira macam contoh SPRM. Kalau dia itu kita demand SPRM kena tukar. Kalau polis tukar. Kalau pemimpin parti, kita kalau perlu tukar, ataupun parti sendiri pun kalau kita perlu tolak, kita kena tolak. Tapi it must be a concerted effort. Mana rakyat keseluruhannya bangkit dan kita ketepikan Cina ke Melayu, India ke Islam ke apa, maknanya pasal semua agama, semua bangsa benci rasuah, benci betul salah guna kuasa, benci kepada orang buat salah undang-undang. Jadi kita kena tolak. Tapi kena bersungguh-sungguh. Tak boleh cakap retorik saja. Jadi ini sebenarnya apa yang kita cuba bangkitkan.
Because that the corruption involves the giver and the taker, not just the taker. Involves
pemberi dan penerima.
And the corruption is not just involve government servant, but also in the corporate, in the private.
Lagi kuat.
And we know that we are now at a situation where corruption in Malaysia is at a system. It is at a situation where it is dah jadi budaya politik and also an entrenched system lah. So it is at a very dangerous level. Now, I want to talk a bit more on the part of corruption. We know the problems. We have spoken about this in previous other webcasts as well. Now, but what do you really need to do to ensure that, or rather to cut down the layers? In Singapore is always a very good example. We know that politicians in Malaysia do not like us to talk about Singapore. Dia tak suka. But let's be realistic about it. They have done a good job, and credit must be given when credit is due.
Yeah.
I recently have started to read up a lot about the logistics system in Malaysia, and we know that suddenly has become an issue again. Now, when you have too many layers in the application for approval, that's when the corruption will come in. If you have a system which is all online, you masukkan ke your online, you apply, and then the KPS says that between 1 minggu must be approved or rejected, and that is all very clear. That is the SOP. And there's no human contact.
Yeah.
But when you have contact, involves custom lah, pegawai, kementerian kesihatan, so many layers lah, maybe 20 to 10 layers of bureaucracy, then that's where the problem begins, because there's human relationship and there's human connection. We need to reduce that to have more online kind of approval. Macam India, if you put a tender, I mean, we think that India is not so sophisticated, but they have actually gone on quite well. In India, if you put a tender, you masukkan dalam website, everybody can see what you're offering. And that why, if you are selected, people know what is your winning score and what you have done exactly. But in many cases in Malaysia, we really do not know how a tender is given. And sometimes ada direct nego, diorang sudah dapat, kita pun tak tahu pasal apa ada dapat, okay? Then we hear all kinds of stories. The stories may be wrong, maybe the company is actually good, but because of these stories that goes around, which could be spread by the person who lost that contract or the tender, dia buat macam-macam tuduhan lah. But if everybody gets to see it, so the best way is actually to put everything online and cut down on the human layers. Well, I think that's one of the a better way to do it now. I want to continue with a question lah, soalan tambahan lah kepada Dato' Husham ni, sebab you have gone on very, very strongly. How long has this campaign been going on? For a year around dah? 1 tahun dah?
6 bulan, 6 months.
Okay, 6 months. After 6 months, you have evolved into a national level. What will be your climax? Are you working towards a target where it will climax at the next PRU, the next general election? Is that the plan?
Okay, actually, when we first started, we wanted to focus the first 6 bulan untuk awareness. Because this culture, masalah sudah 40 tahun punya, 50 tahun punya masalah. You cannot change overnight.
Yeah.
So it must be a well planned. Tapi bila kita melihat apa yang berlaku 2-3 bulan yang lepas, di mana kerajaan berubah bertukar tu, then we brought forward our phase 3 ke phase 1+0. That's why we launched kita punya tuntutan politik Malaysia tanpa rasuah. Because actually what we have in mind, kita punya target adalah Malaysia tanpa rasuah. But in order to have Malaysia tanpa rasuah, kita mesti ada rakyat yang benci rasuah. Rakyat yang benci rasuah. Then kita mesti ada proses pilihan raya tanpa rasuah. Maknanya politician tanpa rasuah. Pasal kita tahu sekarang yang memilih politician ni dia merupakan satu proses juga. Daripada ketua cawangan, ketua bahagian, and all along tu ada money exchange. So that's why why kita introduce politik tanpa rasuah. Because politik Malaysia tanpa rasuah, we hope that with the transformation yang kita introduce 6 tu dan juga yang ditawarkan oleh kerajaan ada 7 ke 8 kan, dan yang di mana PH sign MOU. Jadi kita berharap mereka fokus kepada membuat reformasi ini, iaitu reformasi undang-undang dan reformasi struktural. Itu yang di antara tuntutan. Pasal kita tengok kenapa punca masalah rasuah ni, kerana orang politik terlampau berkuasa. Jadi kita nak cut off. Itu kalau boleh dalam tuntutan kita tu SPRM, AG dibebaskan daripada kuasa politik, ditaruh di parlimen atau direct pada Agong. Ini kita akan tuntut, dan kita dah bergabung dengan 400 NGOs, termasuk NGO besar macam Bersih, C4, Transparency International, yang I think most of these NGOs, diorang datang ke tempat kita because dia rasa sekarang, dulu they have been doing this work for the past many years, but all disconnected in silo. But I think with Rasuah Busters, kita connect all the dots, so we work as a force with one voice. So kita create impact. That's why for the past 6 bulan, kita dengan bantuan media, bantuan banyak organisation with this MGO, I think Rasuah Busters dah create an impact. So now we have offered to the politicians. That means now, since you still ada about 20 bulan, you work with us to execute this reform. Otherwise, kita akan langgar. Kan? Kita akan langgar. Because I think we will be going to the grassroots to campaign for, in fact, kita sekarang sedang buat, almost ready, satu apps di mana nama calon dia check semua ada rekod. Jadi maknanya sekarang, in PRU 15, there will be, we will be the game changer. Maknanya, kalau kita nak supaya semua parti buat reformasi. Dalam masa setahun ni dia tukar kepimpinan yang mana rasuah, kalau dia taruh, dia letak sebagai calon juga akan keluar dalam apps tu. Jadi maknanya we really mean business. Jadi mana kita berharap melalui proses pilihan raya ini kita boleh tukar kepimpinan politik negara, dan kita ada lagi kempen. Kita ada kempen kita bisnes tanpa rasuah. We have, because dalam 400 lebih NGO tu ada orang korporat apa, and a lot of professionals are working with us. So diorang akan buat sedang susun strategi, and in fact we are working with few corporate companies ini yang untuk implement ni. Jadi maknanya kita akan go by industry. Maknanya contoh construction industries, apa macam what Datuk Seri mention tadilah, proses-proses tender ke apa kan, digitalization ke apa semua, maknanya this is actually really a concerted effort lah. That means we really mean business. And we are also working with educationist group, even Dongzong working with us, or the Chinese education, or the Muslim, even people like Abim, people like a lot of Muslim organisation are working with maknanya the educationist group. Kita akan juga start education at the lowest level, daripada kindergarten ke apa. Maknanya kali ini kita nak gerakkan supaya rakyat benci rasuah. Anak-anak kecil benci rasuah. That's why we produce a lot of videos. If you see our videos, budak-budak kecil, orang Hindu berdoa cara Hindu, orang Kristian berdoa cara Kristian, Buddhis berdoa, Muslim berdoa cara itu. Jadi maknanya because we feel that this is a Malaysian problem.
Yes.
But we must change the political scenario in Malaysia. Then only baru kita boleh.
Dato', you know that your movement should work towards the reformulation of the systems, because that is a much more effective way.
Yes.
It cannot be a point where we continue to enable to MACC to go on investigating and to arrest people. That doesn't work effectively. The process of cutting down the possibilities or the temptation or opportunities to be corrupt must be cut down. So that is the best way. Like for example, I think that the police, for example, the police should not be having roadblocks. If I commit a crime for driving too fast, just put me on camera and send me the bill, send the fine to me. You should not have people, having roadblock by the side, maybe asking you to stop. Then that gives rise to a lot of allegation and suspicious of corruption. That should go, for example. And of course, the big ones will be application and process. Now, I want to ask this question to both David and Husham. When it comes to involvement of the ordinary people, if they are charged for corruption, everybody goes to court because they have to wear, sometimes under remand, they have to wear the yellow, the orange. Orange. And then most of them will put their heads down. And now because they can wear mask, terus pakai mask, okay? But if you look at the politicians, none of them feel shameful. They are waving to the media, okay? Waving to the media, shaking hand, posing for pictures. Aku tengok ada yang masuk ke dalam wheelchair pun dah stop dia ambil wheelchair, lambai-lambai dah shake hand with the media. Aku pun hairan lah, because in some cases there's no more shame, and there's even the catch line, malu apa bosku kan. So there's really no shame, and I think that I may have my differences with Dr. Mahathir, but he was right. He says that there's no longer a shame when it comes to corruption of big cases, because they can always say that, look, I was clean, but I'm a victim of political persecution. Why is there this contradiction where the small timer feel shameful, the big timers don't feel shameful? Anyone can answer this?
I will answer that by asking you a question. Okay. Why, when the opposition and the government signed an MOU, did they leave out the Party Funding Act, regulations to regulate party funding? Why was that conveniently left out? I'm not on either side. right? Because that's the root of it all. If on top, that's the justification one. Look at all the cases, right? Oh, for the benefit of this people or the benefit of the party, whatever, it's always that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I did it for the so and so, right? And it starts from the top, right? And there even some ministers said in the old days, people would come with boxes, bags, and it's for the party. I needed this for the party, or they gave me this donation for the party. Both sides of the block. I'm not singling out anyone. And they had a golden opportunity to sign that deal in the MOU. So my question is, why didn't they do it? Why did they leave it out? You know what I mean? So it's endemic. And it's endemic because, and why they say like that is because at that level, it's almost like an entitlement.
Yeah.
If you look at the defense that they all give in court or the statements or whatever they say, I'm entitled to it, what?
Yeah.
Because so to me, I think all of everything that was said earlier, yes, we can do all those reforms, but unless we have that from the top, where you cannot just use money and party funding and all of this thing, and we cut it at the top, it will trickle down to the bottom. I mean, that's my point of view. You know?
I missed that too. You brought up a very particular point. When it comes to funding, everybody keeps a complete silence. And even for that matter, if we talk about the anti-hopping law for a long, long time, sometimes a crisis brings about an opportunity. Politicians are forced to have reform. But for a long, long time, actually, in many cases where what they call it, party hopping has benefited both sides. And you know that in Sabah, the Barisan National Government actually collapsed because this Barisan National Government Barisan National MPs crossed over to Parti Warisan, and the whole Barisan National Government collapsed. And my colleague yesterday, in the interview, Philip Gungai, in an interview with Dato' Azalina, said that it's karma for UMNO because finally we found that UMNO MPs cross over to Parti Bersatu, which was unimaginable. Okay, now Dato' Syam, just still on the question of budaya, macam dah jadi biasa dah. Kalau kena tangkap, dituduh bawa diheret ke mahkamah, biasa dah.
Biasa.
What's your view?
Okay, first saya nak sambung yang Datuk David mention tadi about the party funding. I think in our one of the 6 is that we demanded is party funding. Because I think I agree with Dr. David, that is very fundamental. We must fight for that. Okay, then on your question tadi about the malu, I want to relate to you satu experience that I personally faced in Indonesia 15 years ago. I landed at the airport, I was sitting in the taxi. So the taxi driver at that time, Soeharto punya family just fell, kan, baru collapse. So he was mentioning to me, dia kata, this building, ini Harto, Tommy Harto punya, ini the name of the sons lah, Soeharto. Ini Soeharto punya, ini semua, ini mereka punya, ini punya. Hanya satu saja mereka tak punya. Saya tanya apa Pak? Malu. Dia orang tak ada malu. Sama juga di Malaysia sekarang. They have everything tapi malu tak ada. That's why when case MACC ni, why I came up with a very strong statement, suruh Pesuruhjaya, ketua Pesuruhjaya Datuk Azam Baki to go on garden leave because he must carry that responsibility. Kan? So on the budaya, I think only the rakyat can change because we were the one who sent the leaders up. We must bring them down. That means the Chinese must be prepared to dump the Chinese leaders, the corrupted Chinese leaders. The Malay leaders must be willing to dump the corrupted Malay leaders. The Muslim leaders, the Muslim must be prepared to dump the corrupted Muslim leaders. Then we can change. So I think we must do this together. Inshallah, we can change. We cannot condone because the problem with us for the past 40 years, we condone. So if we stop condoning, we can do it, inshallah.
I think that for most of us, enough is enough. And this time, we have a large number of young voters who are voting for the first time. And I think that they will be a game changer. While many of us who are, as you say, the baby boomers who have become cynical, we have lost the fire in our belly sometimes because we have fought so many battles and we have lost, and we find the same characters and the same actors still on stage. They have become, thank you for waving the Malaysian flag, okay? But the young voters will be quite different. They don't have many baggages to carry. On this note, David, Dato' Husham, I just want to tell our viewers tonight who are watching this, this is not the final webcast on this issue. Coming up soon, okay, I'm going to tell you the involvement of a Malaysian. We have Jolo, and we seems to be exporting conmen, okay? Coming up soon, so you do not miss this program. This involves another Malaysian, okay? His name is Leonard Glenn Francis. They call him Fat Leonard. He has been involved. He's now in the US. He has been involved in the mastermind behind the biggest US Navy scandal. Okay, now he has provided money, prostitutes, travel expenses, luxury items, concert tickets to Lady Gaga, to a large number of US Navy officers, including those from the US 7th Fleet. So what he is exactly? He's actually Penangai, Ong Penang lah, macam Jolo, macam saya juga, So this man is known as Fat Leonard because he was 350 pounds, but he has slimmed down, and now he's under surveillance, 24-hour surveillance in a private house in US because he has decided to be a prosecution witness. Now this guy, it was a defense scandal, so he serviced all the US Navy ships, from delivering food, providing fuel, to even removing the sewage, So everything he caught him and he piled the entire US Navy. Is the biggest US Navy scandal in the history of the US. He probably has received more top secret information than anyone. I think China would ask him to be a spy for them, Now, so coming up, this discussion will be with Tom, Tom, let me get his name right. Tom Wright, who co-authored the book $1 Billion Whale on Jolo. It's coming up next. It's going to be a very interesting discussion. And as Dr. Husham and David, we will pursue and continue our crusade, our jihad, whatever they call it, against corruption. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.